Welcome back to Board with Paint. Today I'll be showing you how to paint Skeletor from the Masters of the Universe Clash for Eternia board game. As with other videos in this series, I started off by priming Skeletor in black, following up with a gray and white prime from above. We'll get started here by filling in the inside of Skeletor's mouth, eyes, and nose with pure black. While we wait for that to dry, I'm applying Ahriman Blue as a base coat on all of his skin. For Skeletor's face, I'm using Vallejo model color Lemon Yellow. Because yellow is the worst color of all, it doesn't cover very well, so you'll probably need a couple of coats. You can see how poorly the first coat covered here. After waiting for all 50 coats of yellow to dry, I'm next applying Tesseract Glow. This is a Citadel technical paint that works a little bit like a contrast paint. You just apply this over the entire area, allowing it to pool into the recesses. This gives the entire skull sort of a green tinge. To try to bring back some of the details, I'm applying Nuln Oil to the entire area of skull. Now I'm returning to the yellow and reapplying some of the highlights. I actually struggled a bit to get a look on the skull that I really liked, so you could probably experiment with different recipes than what I've done here. Since the Tesseract Glow pulled into the recesses, I'm now going back in with black and reinforcing those dark areas. I'm also using this to reinforce the gaps between the teeth to give them a little more contrast. Next, we'll paint Skeletor's hood with royal purple. For his armor and staff, I want to use the same color, but I'm now mixing it with some Leadbelcher to give it a metallic sheen. This will cover both the chest armor and the boots. I'm also using this same color on the staff. It wouldn't be a Master of the Universe character if you didn't have to paint some underpants. We're painting Skeletors with black gray from Vallejo model color. And that's it for the base coats. We'll move on to highlighting the skin by mixing some Flayed One Flesh into the Ahriman Blue. Even though the base color of the skin is a very cold blue, we can bring some life into the skin by using a warm flesh color as a highlight. Now, I'm not sure if Skeletor is supposed to be undead, in which case bringing some life into the skin might not be appropriate, but let me know in the comments if you know more about the lore of Skeletor than I do. The general idea for this highlighting is to just go to each muscle individually and highlight the upper or raised areas, leaving the recesses untouched. We'll build this up brighter and brighter over the course of a couple of different layers. We'll continue to highlight the skin in a couple of layers, each time adding more Flayed One Flesh. Just as in the He-Man episode, we're covering a slightly smaller area of the muscles each time. I'm adding more Flayed One Flesh into the mix here, but notice also the lighter I get, the thinner the paint gets. This will help each new layer blend with the one underneath it. Next, we'll go in and reinforce some of the shadows by using a Drakenhof Nightshade wash. We're not applying this over all of the skin, we're concentrating it between the muscles and on the undersides of any of the surfaces. I'm also using this to help reinforce the separations between the underpants and the skin, the boots and the skin, and the other parts of the miniature. For all of the armor pieces, we'll mix a highlight color using royal purple, some silver, and a little bit of white. In general, this works similarly to the muscles, but we want to focus maybe on smaller areas of highlight. This will make the surface look shinier. On any of the straight surfaces, be sure to do an edge highlight with this color. The edges of metal tend to gather highlights that are much brighter than the rest of the piece. For the fine details on the head of the staff, I'm sort of doing an overbrush using the side of the brush to just pick out the upper raised areas of the texture. We'll push this a little brighter by adding some white and silver into the mix. Now we'll highlight the hood by mixing royal purple and azure. Even though this is essentially the same base color as the armor, we do want it to look different because it's a different material. Not only will we achieve this by adding blue instead of white as the highlight color, but we'll also try to make the transition much smoother. This effectively means we'll be adding many more layers than we did on the armor. This highlight will just be applied to the upper areas and any of the top parts of the folds in the fabric. We'll continue to add layers, each time adding a little more blue. When we apply subsequent layers, we want to stay inside the previous highlight that we did and build up the gradient gradually. Here's some more blue. And here I'm applying a final highlight using almost pure azure. With this final highlight, I'm being sure to hit the edges of the hood. This will really help frame the face. Now to smooth out the transition a bit, I'm mixing royal purple with some Vallejo glaze medium. To maintain control of the glaze, we'll want to wick off excess moisture. Then we brush this between the areas of highlight and the areas of deepest shadow. This will bring all the layers together and ease those transitions a bit. Next, we'll highlight the loincloth by mixing some white into the base color black-gray. This is just being applied to the fur at the top. You don't really need to be too neat with this because it's a highly textured surface, and we're going to be toning it down with some ink later. If you prefer, this would actually be a pretty good place to use a dry brush. I just chose not to because dry brushing can be a little inaccurate and I didn't want to get any paint on the areas that I had already finished. Now I'll cover the entire area with some black ink. This is going over both the dark and the highlighted parts. This should make the loincloth look black while still providing a little bit of contrast. I wanted to return to the armor and boost the shadows a little bit, so I'm mixing some royal purple with Leadbelcher and black and using that to glaze into the shadows of the armor. I'm trying to avoid the brightest areas of highlight and keep the shadows in the areas of the armor that would receive the least amount of light. While painting this miniature, I also painted the version of Skeletor mounted on Panther. Skeletor on this model has a sword on his back, and I'm base coating that in natural steel. I'm following that up with a wash of black ink. Once the ink is dry, I'm going back with some silver and hitting the upper areas and highlights, and also doing an edge highlight along the edge of the blade. In the card artwork, Skeletor's eyes are glowing. So for that effect, I'm applying a red dot into each eye socket with bloody red. Sorry about the angle, some of the fine detail work is hard to get on camera. Next, I'll create a little bit of an orange color by mixing lemon yellow with the bloody red. Then I'll apply a smaller dot in the middle of the red dot in the eye socket. This is almost imperceptible, so feel free to leave the eye sockets completely black. And there we have Skeletor. Thank you for watching Board with Paint. Please like and subscribe and do all the things the algorithm likes. And let me know down in the comments who you'd like to see me paint. Skeletor will be back next week when I show you how to paint him mounted on Panther. But until then, I wish you all happy painting.